Hey, welcome back to Roundtail Restoration, everybody. My name's Chris, standing in the frame of my 1964 Triumph TR4. The channel I've been kind of jumping around all over the place lately, so I want to get back to the basics here, get into this frame again, and get it cleaned up. I did repair a spot of damage on it that I did a video on that you can watch, but otherwise I think it's a solid frame. I've done all the measurements on it. I think she's ready to go, but she's really dirty. So I need to get all this caked on muck and grime and everything else from the last 70 years, 60 years of its life, get all that stuff off, get it down to practically bare metal so that I can get it painted and then hopefully start putting stuff back on. Because this is a restoration after all. So, thanks so much for watching. Let's get it sorted. Well, it probably doesn't look a whole lot different, but it's a little cleaner, at least in the back here. No surprises. You look here, one thing that I did notice on the Spitfire frame, and that is obviously a repeat here on the TR4 frame, is one, they weren't too concerned with their weld splatter. But here, these two brackets here are essentially that there's a U-shaped strap metal that goes there, and it's essentially the top rebound stop kind of thing for the differential and that rear axle. And right here you can see all this weld, so that's where the frame goes from a straight to a slight angle and starts to curve up. It just kind of surprises me that they put a weld there instead of, I mean, maybe they didn't have the technology or the oomph or whatever to actually bend it back then, but I just guess I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bend it, especially right there where, you know, you're going right across the leaf springs and everything else, and it seems like that would be a relatively high pressure point, but no cracks or anything, at least that I can see, so obviously it held. There is some damage, not damage, there is some bending and stuff like that. I'll show you that here. So you can see here where this is bent down, there's a little piece, I think I might be off camera here, that's bent up. The jacking points are bent a little bit. So I'm just gonna take a hammer to that and flatten that out, a big hammer. It's interesting to me that this is bent down. You would think it'd be bent up from hitting a bump on the road or something like that, so I'm not quite sure what would have caused that, but it's not, not the end of the world or anything, but we're gonna go ahead and smack that around a little bit, kind of straighten that up, just to kind of move along, and obviously I haven't taken a wire brush to anything down here. This is still a hot mess down here. All right, first do the little jack stands here. All right, so obviously they had a flat tire on the passenger side more than the driver's side. Lock this little guy flat. It's actually hard to get in there. I'm gonna not mess around with that too much. This here. All right, and see if I can't get this guy. I probably blocked a whole lot of that, so I apologize for that, but all right, well, everything was falling there, but that's better. I'm not going to freak out about this and make a big deal out of it. That's good enough for me, at least for now. All right, so as you can see, I got the frame outside here, and on Friday, it's now Monday, Labor Day. On Friday, I'm going to have a mobile blaster, media blaster, come out and blast the frame. Instead of me trying to clean it all, it's just too many nooks and crannies and everything. I'm just afraid that I'm not going to get everything that I want to get and get it professionally cleaned enough so that when I put epoxy down on it, which I also have standing by, that it's not going to be a waste of my time, and the epoxy is just not going to adhere very well. So that's here in a couple days, but I do have some spots, especially like in the t-shirt region in here. It's not really called the t-shirt on the older TR4 frames, but in this box section here, just some grease and grime, especially up by the forward suspension arms and the suspension towers. Just going to try to take some of the heavier stuff off because I'm not real sure how well the blaster will do with that, and I don't want the guy to show up and go, "Hey, sorry, we can't do this because it's not cleaned well enough." So I'm sure this is going to make a mess. Pressure wash it real quick, and I'll come back when I'm done and show you. But hopefully this will be a good experience on Friday here, and we'll get this thing nice and pretty and be ready to start putting stuff back on. So I safely got the frame, well, maybe not safely, but I got the frame in the garage no worse for wear, and it cleaned up pretty well. There's still some spots, especially in the nooks and crannies, that I couldn't get all of the grease out, so hopefully that it won't be a problem for the blaster. Definitely the heavy duty stuff is gone. So there are some suspension tie points like right here on the bottom A-arm, and the front tie points for the rear leaf springs. I want to protect those against the blasting media, so I reached out to them, and essentially what I'm going to do is degrease everything just to make sure that the tape will stick, and then use blue painter's tape to kind of protect the surface, and then wrap that from tape residue, and then wrap that in either 3M duct tape or Gorilla Tape. Gorilla Tape is what I got. They recommended some high quality duct tape, and that should be able to withstand anything. I'm not going to worry about any of the threaded areas, so we'll get that cleaned up, and then here we'll sit until Friday.
All right, it's Friday afternoon, about 11:15 or so. The mobile blaster said he'd be here between 10 and 11, so hopefully any minute now. But I got the frame out here on an old boat trailer, got it cleaned up, and it actually kept the rust off pretty good from the blasting that I did, or the pressure washing that I did. So just a couple spots that got rusted up, but nothing bad. I went and protected the surfaces of those machine spots. I think I showed you that. So now, like I said, I'm just waiting on the mobile blaster to show up, so I'm hoping he'll do this side. We'll flip the thing over and do the other side, and it'll be done. Hopefully quick and painless. And I'll let you know final costs and all that kind of stuff, and we'll go from there. So hopefully here, the next shot you'll see is some blasting going on, or questions or something. All right, so the sandblasting in progress. I forgot to hit the record button. Running about 180 cubic feet per minute. Time for some media change out. That'll be 5 bags total. And because I wasn't recording when he first started, I apologize, but he's running about 70 pounds. Air compressor does about 185 standard cubic feet per minute. So quite massive. All right, well, the flame blasting is all done, and I'm very happy with it. Definitely saved me a lot of work. Everything is down to bare metal. There's a couple spots that I didn't catch and that he didn't catch. He did have me inspect it several times throughout the blasting, just in kind of the corners and stuff, where I'll have to scrape some stuff off inside the cavern there. There's some stuff in there left, but for the most part, it's definitely clean. So those little spots I'll just be able to clean up. I'm sure there's still some sand in there, so that'll be part of the prep to get all that out. But it's ready for paint. There's no way that it's not. That's well abraded, so it's pretty rough to the feel, and I'm sure it'll be ready for epoxy. So that'll be the next thing up, to get this back onto the stilts some way, and then get a couple coats of paint on her. So as you can see there on that thermometer, we're looking at about 61 degrees, and that's the temperature of that frame. The epoxy primer requires a minimum of 65 degrees, otherwise the chemicals in it, whatever activators and everything, goes dormant, and the stuff just won't cure properly, and I'm not going to take that chance. Entirely too much invested on this guy so far to try to cut a corner here and then be sorry. Fortunately, it is supposed to get warmer later in the week, about 70 to 80 degrees pretty consistently for several days, so I imagine it'll warm up nice down here, and I'll be able to paint it. The outside air temperature right now is only about 60, so it's only going to get cooler in here today, so we won't be painting it today. However, there are some spots, like I had pointed out, where there's still some gunk in there, so I can work on cleaning that. And the gloves that I used to handle it, unfortunately, were not clean. Should have thought about that, so now I got some spots of grease and dirt and stuff like that on the frame that I want to get cleaned up, so we're going to go ahead and do that as well. Won't bore you with that, so next time, hopefully, when I come at this thing, you'll see me with a paintbrush in hand, ready to go to town.
So I'm going to be a little hard to understand because I got my mask on. I got the Southern Polyurethanes epoxy primer here. You can see that big old glop on the end. That's the stuff that collects in the bottom. You got to really mix this stuff up, especially the first time, because it all settles out. It's going to take a little while to get all this stuff mixed up, but that's where all the goodness is. So you want to make sure you get all that stuff up, get it well mixed. What I'm going to do is not going to paint now. This is Thursday night, the 12th of September. The frame has been sitting, unfortunately, for almost a week. It is starting to develop some rust, but nothing significant that I'm going to worry about. I do have to still wax and grease remove it, and I'll take care of that tomorrow. But I'm going to mix this paint up tonight and let it sit overnight. I do have some concern for UV protection. The workshop manual tells you the tech sheet for the paint tells you to, if you're worried about UV protection, to induce it for 4 hours. Anything over 4 hours doesn't really get you anything. But I don't want to come over tomorrow and wait for 4 hours while I wait for the paint to induce. So I'm going to do it overnight tonight. The pot life on this stuff is several days, 72 to 120 hours it says. I'm not worried about it curing up in the pot on me, and I'm going to keep it covered. And it's going to be on the cooler side. But I'm hoping that it won't drop below 65 degrees tonight in here. It's a little bit warmer today, so it's a little bit warmer in here. So we'll see. So I'll get this mixed up. And then I'm going to do, I don't know, like a quart, I think. What do I got here? I got a 2.5 quart bin. Yeah, I'm going to do about just shy of a quart. Mix that up and see what I get from it. So this epoxy primer mixes 1-to-1, so 1 part of activator and 1 part epoxy. What I learned when painting the Spitfire is I put the epoxy in first, especially on a clean cup, and then pour the paint on top of that. And the reason being is because depending on what kind of cup you get, sometimes these numbers are printed on the inside, or something will happen where the paint covers up your numbers and then you can't see, and it kind of messes you up, obviously. So I think on this case the numbers are on the outside, but just to be sure. Also, this can is pretty old. It's from February 2020. However, it's been sealed the entire time, and though it might be an amber color as opposed to more clear, pretty much as long as it's been sealed, it's got an indefinite half-life, but that you got to use it within a year of opening it. So I'm hoping that a quart is going to be enough. I don't really know. Obviously, if I'm short, then I'm going to have to wait 4 hours tomorrow to let it induce. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So now I've got the sealer, the activator in there, and I fill it up to the 1 on the 1-to-1 scale. And then I'm going to pour the paint in and fill it up to the 1 over on this side. So let me get that kind of cleaned up a little bit. I got this little cheesy pour spout from Amazon just to put it on there, just to make it a little easier to pour this stuff so I don't lose a lot and make a mess. This paint is not cheap. A gallon of activator and a gallon of epoxy runs about 280 bucks. So it's you don't want to waste this stuff. So let me get kind of situated here, and I'll be right back. I have a sneaking suspicion that this thing is going to leak, so I got it over a towel here. So we're going to pour into the number 1 line. All right, we're going to stir that up. All right, and cover that. And then that should be good here in a couple hours, or for tomorrow to use. Now, another thing that I learned that was recommended on SPI's website is when you got a whole gallon like this, especially if you're not going to use it for a while, you can go ahead and transfer it to a quart can and keep this one sealed so you're not opening it and closing it and opening it and close it. All that oxygen in and out of there will tend to cause this stuff to go bad quicker. So I'm going to dump it in this quart can, and then any future paint that I use, I'll take it out of this quart can. All right, and I knew it was going to leak. All right, so go ahead and seal that up. All right, label it black epoxy. And today's date, so I know when I opened it. All right, we'll set that aside. for future use, and we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up and get that sealed, put the same date on it, and get that set aside. So now, like I said, that paint is going to sit overnight here, and you need to do it at least 4 hours, and then next time you see me, we'll be ready to paint.
Finally, paint day. So first things first, I got to wax and grease remove the whole thing. There is some surface rust on there. I'm not worried about that. Looking at the SPI website, the surface rust like that, the epoxy will kind of just eat that stuff up. So, but I'm pretty happy with how it remained relatively clean as far as the rust goes. Still got some spots where there's gunk and mung and stuff, and I'm gonna kind of paint through it, I guess. But I got a whole bunch of disposable chip brushes. That's all I'm gonna use. I do have some, if you can see here on top of the spot right there, I've got some earplugs, and I'm gonna use that to plug holes, thread holes and stuff. So wax and grease remove it first, wipe it on down, go through and get the threads protected, because I am going to be using a paintbrush, so I don't want to gob it on and gum up the threads where I get to the point where I can't clean them out. And then we'll get to painting. So about an hour or so, you're supposed to wait after you do the wax and grease remover. I'm going to bring a fan in and just run a fan in here over top of it to try to speed that up a little bit. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes or so. I'm going to give the paint a good stir and then get to painting. I'll tell you what, that took a heck of a lot longer than I thought it would. Pain in the ass. That was about 3 hours. Maybe 2/3 of it's done. I need to run around real quick and get some touch up for drips and drabs and stuff like that to make sure I don't have huge runs. It's not going down as good as I thought it would. The epoxy, SPI epoxy puts a pretty nice gloss. I don't have that right now. I think it might be just because it's the first coat, and I probably shouldn't worry about it. But up front where the suspension is, like I had thought, that's a real bare, just all the nooks and crannies and everything like that. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, I'll be able to get more of that, especially when I flip it over. So let me go around, check real quick, and then I'm going to give it about 30 minutes to sit, and then I'll hit it again with coat number 2. So that is 2 coats of black epoxy. Went pretty well. The second coat was definitely easier to put on than the first. So now I've got about 7 days, a 7-day recoat window where I can put anything on top of this epoxy, and I need to flip it over. And the SPI told me to wait about 3 to 4 days before I flip it over and put the weight on the fresh paint. So I'll wait about that 3 to 4 days, and then I'll get 2 coats on the other side. I do have a little bit of paint left over for them that I mixed. I'm not sure that it's going to last those 3 or 4 days in the bucket. It might cure up on me, but that's not big of a deal. So the suspension towers are probably the biggest thing that I didn't really get to. I just think a lot of that might be easier, even if I have to come up from underneath when it's flipped over. But otherwise, it went pretty well. So most of the frame is painted. Really, all I've got to do is the top side of the other side, and then, like I said, the suspension towers and some of the tubes and stuff like that. But this is probably 3/4 of the way painted. So I'm not going to show you the rest of the painting. You get the gist. And like I had mentioned, with the cost of the media blasting at about $700 and the paint just shy of $300, though I only used a quart instead of a 2 gallons mixed, we're looking at $800-900 or so for materials to get this frame up to factory specs. So that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.